Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, November the 1st, 2023. Happy November! And as it's the 1st of November, my subject matter for today is going to be November. I want to give you a preview of the month. It's going to be pretty brief. I'm not going to go into microscopic detail. I'm just going to give you the broad events as I see them and how I think they might manifest. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, November the 1st, 2023. Now, that picture top right, it's just a picture of a tree with dead leaves on it. I mean, it's the 1st of November, autumn. I suppose that makes sense, doesn't it? So, what's going on today, astrologically? I don't think a great deal, actually. It's not really a day to write home about. You can see that the moon is in late Gemini. The moon has made its last major aspect with a traditional planet before leaving the sign. So the moon is void. Void, of course. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to be aspecting anything. Certainly not going to be making any major aspects to anything before it leaves the sign, and so that suggests that today, for most of us, not much is going to happen. We might have plans, we might have hopes, we might want to organize things, but don't get your hopes up. Don't have any expectations, because it really is unlikely to work out. I'm not saying it's going to be bad. It's just not going to happen. Now, the moon being at 27 Gemini at noon in New York is moving towards Cancer, and New York time at 5:30 in the afternoon, the moon goes into Cancer. If you're in Los Angeles or Portland, Oregon, or Seattle, or I suppose Vancouver in Canada, the moon will go into Cancer even earlier at 2:30 in the afternoon. So in the Americas this evening, or even in the afternoon, you get to experience the moon moving from Gemini to Cancer. And of course, the moment the moon moves into Cancer, it's no longer void of course. It straight away makes a trine aspect to Saturn. Then it starts to apply to a trine of the Sun. So yeah, in the Americas, this evening is going to be more interesting. There's going to be a sudden pickup of energy, and it may be possible to get things done. But that's the Americas. If you're in London, you're going to have to wait for the moon to go into Cancer. You're going to have to wait until 9:30 in the evening. So you won't have very long to take. You really won't get very long to take advantage of this sign change. Moon moving from Gemini to Cancer. If you're in Australasia, New Zealand, Asia, it's just not going to happen. The moon is going to be in Gemini all day long. So yes, so it does to an extent depend where you are. And as I've said, in the Americas, you do get to experience the moon moving into Cancer late in the day, and really that is pretty much it. You know, Mars is still in Scorpio. There's Mars in Scorpio. It's still conjunct Mercury. It's still conjunct Sun. So there's still this big Scorpio build-up. There's still plenty of scope for people to get, angry. Particularly as, Mars is still opposition Jupiter. The Sun is now starting to apply to an opposition of Jupiter, which is the same as a heliocentric conjunction between the Earth and Jupiter are building up. So yes, we can't let our guard down. If we behave incorrectly, we could get ourselves into a big argument, and there could be conflicts of opinion. But I suspect for most of us, it's just not going to be a very interesting day, good or bad. It's just going to be as if nothing's applying to nothing, which perhaps is good. There's just scope to, relax, just be yourself, and just don't have any expectations. Nonetheless, I did my forecasts for the 12 signs for today. So here they are. Okay, so these are my forecasts for today, which is Wednesday, November the 1st, 2023. Aries, there's something you want to say, but you're wondering whether anyone will hear you. I suppose the message has to be delivered in the right way, and you also have to be patient. Just because there's no reaction doesn't mean that nothing has happened. Short distance travelling is probably a waste of time. Taurus, you feel that you know best, but is now the right time for giving advice? You're not completely sure of your facts, if you're honest, and there's plenty of scope for making big mistakes. So perhaps you need to review the situation and familiarize yourself with the facts. Spending money should be avoided. Gemini, you've done your best, even if it doesn't feel like it, and you can now sit back and watch how things play out. At first, you might think that it's all been a waste of time, but under the surface, things are happening, and resist the temptation to start something new. It's unlikely to work out. Cancer, you're getting ready to shift gears, to act rather than react. But the time isn't quite right, and it's still necessary to sit back and to watch and to think. It's because things do still have to play out, and right now this hasn't happened. When the time is right, the atmosphere will change and you'll have your chance. Leo, you have this strange feeling that you've seen it all before, and this applies to people as well as situations. You listen to someone talk and you realize that you've heard it hundreds of times before. But this is the way people are, and it's no reason to take drastic action. Sometimes a bit of distance can improve relationships. Virgo, something is past the halfway stage, and this requires you to think ahead. As one thing comes to an end, something else starts, and it may be a transition from the material to the inspirational, going beyond the nuts and bolts to a sense of purpose and fulfillment. In this light, it might be a good idea to make a wish as a declaration of intent. Libra, ideas on their own aren't enough. They need some substance. And today you reluctantly reach this conclusion. And what you will soon have to do is ground your ideas, perhaps in a financial or business sense. But for the moment, you can keep thinking, wondering, and speculating. Scorpio, you can deal with a high level of complexity, so if something seems like hard work, don't panic. Once you're engaged, you'll go deeper and deeper, and you'll come up with the solutions you're looking for. It is a good day for discussing serious subjects and for verbalizing difficult emotions. Sagittarius, you're in a position to make up your mind, for example, about particular people and whether or not they can be trusted. This means that some relationships should grow closer, but other relationships may be reaching their conclusion. At the same time, things that seem simple may very soon become complicated. Capricorn, you might feel that certain things going on in your life are never ending, particularly things that are routine and boring, but it may be the darkest hour before the dawn. The end is close, even if you can't see it. And if you're in the Americas, then by the end of the day, you should be seeing real improvements. Aquarius, you're able to be rational, which is more than can be said for a lot of other people. There is craziness in the air, and dialogue may be difficult, but not for you. So you can get people to talk, and perhaps you can act as a messenger. But if you're really enjoying something, you must recognize that nothing lasts forever. Pisces, enjoy the day's tranquility and perhaps make some final changes to ongoing plans, because sooner or later the pace will start to increase again, and staying in one place might not be an option. And towards the end of the day, particularly if you're in the Americas, there's a change. And with fun and pleasure, you'll find that things become increasingly exciting. You're going to want new things to be going on in your life, and your sense of fun is going to really kick into action. So if you're in the Americas, have a fun evening. I'm now going to switch to the I Ching. So as always, I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for people watching this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 23, splitting apart. Not a great one. It's kind of telling us that, the evil is out there. Things are coming unstuck. The powers of darkness are on the rise. Now, that sounds a bit melodramatic. This is actually quite a short-term thing. But it's like we have to split apart from something. It's like something is rotten, something is in a state of decay, something is swamped by evil, and we have to split apart. We have to get out. And so that's the first thing that's going on today. The evil is on the rise. You can see that it goes up and up and up, and the second line moves and the fourth line moves, and that sort of says that evil gets to the highest of places. And there's a suggestion there that part of a problem with this splitting apart is that we're somewhat aloof. Perhaps we might be too arrogant, too confident of our abilities. And because of that arrogance, because of that overconfidence, we are sort of detaching ourselves from the rest of humanity, and in the process, we are making ourselves incredibly vulnerable. So we need to be aware of the situation. We need to just make a break from the evil and the disintegration that is all around us. Now, this hexagram splitting apart, it does move. It moves to this one, 64, before completion. It is the last hexagram in the book, because there are 64 hexagrams in all, and this is the 64th. So we are trying to split apart. We are trying to distance ourselves from something. I mean, or at least we're being told that's what we should be doing. And then, before completion gives us some idea about the way it's working. So we can symbolize our attempts to split apart, to make a clean break, as like crossing a great river. That's the symbolism in 64. It's about a fox trying to cross a river. There might be ice on the river, and it's a really dangerous crossing. The fox has to be incredibly well behaved, and the I Ching says, it mustn't get its tail wet. So if we've made a decision that something is no good, that we have to split apart from something, we then have to make the crossing. And it's a difficult crossing. It's a crossing where we have to have our eyes wide open, because if we don't look at what's going on, we could be overwhelmed by the water that we're trying to cross. And we aren't crossed until we're crossed. We're not crossed. We haven't crossed this river when we can see the far bank. We have to actually be on the far bank. So it's important not to drop your guard right at the last moment, because that would be such a pity. So that gives you an idea about today. There are some disintegrating forces around, and we may have to sort of start over again with something. Even then, we need to be careful, because we in the end are having to confront a challenge, which we can see it as being like crossing a river, and it's so easy to be dragged down. So we've got to take it really, got to be really careful. But if we are careful, it should be okay, and we can start again. We can start afresh. Okay, so that's the I Ching. I now want to look at November. November. Okay, let's look at November. So we could take a chart for the very start of November. When November begins. So, for example, Gaza has been in the news. So why not set a chart for Gaza? For November the 1st, 2023 at noon, Gaza, Israel. It doesn't really matter. Of course, Gaza is in the Gaza Strip, but I don't think it's really Israel, but that's what the astrology program has it under. So if I set this chart for the beginning of November in some different location in Moscow or in London, it's going to be a similar chart. It's not a big deal, the fact that I've set it for for Gaza. Now, what we see in this chart, and I'm seeing this chart, by the way, as the birth chart of November. I'm suggesting that at some level we can describe November through this chart. And so, okay, set for Gaza, we see that we've got Jupiter and Uranus close to the midheaven. I mean, I could set it for somewhere else, and it's not going to look that different. I mean, if I don't know, if I set the chart for I don't know, if I set the chart for New York, just to show you, just to really make it clear to you that it doesn't really make any difference where it is. If I set it for New York, it will look pretty similar. There you go. Jupiter and Uranus are off the midheaven. So I suppose you could say that sort of Gaza, Israel, Jupiter and Uranus on the midheaven, that's quite dramatic. This whole month of November, because this is that will be the time for the beginning, for the beginning of a month. So Jupiter and Uranus on the midheaven, the desire for freedom. Now, freedom depends who you are. I mean, I suppose if you're Hamas, freedom means one thing. If you're Israeli, freedom means another thing. If you're an ordinary resident of Gaza without any political affiliations, freedom means yet something else. So that's that gives us an idea about November. Jupiter is still opposition Mars. Jupiter's opposition the Sun. I know that these aspects are starting to break up, but I think they will characterize the whole of November, the whole of a month. The whole of a month is going to be fraught with tensions and disagreements and people having completely different views, and just finding it just difficult to find agreement. And that's not just in Ukraine, it's not just in Gaza, it's here, it's in the here and now. It's right here. So through this month, just consider your own views and consider how stubborn you might be being. We can all be stubborn. We can all be obnoxious. I don't know. It's like, for example, God, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday I was walking the dog, and the dog stopped outside this house and didn't want to move. And I'm not a really very assertive dog owner, and so I thought, okay, dog wants to stop here. So we stopped there, and I was looking at my phone, and just let the dog go. And then I don't know. Then someone from the house told me to move on because I was annoying their dogs, and I came so close to saying, it's a public road. I can stand where I like. That's what I wanted to say. I came really close to saying it, but I didn't. But I was I'm not normally the kind of person who would even think about doing that, but I came close to it. And, that shows us what we're dealing with here. We've got this Mars-Jupiter opposition. All of us, however rational we are, we can behave in stupid, childish, obnoxious ways. Really be careful throughout this month. Mars-Jupiter opposition might move on, but the thing is, it's baked into the chart of November, that moment when November comes into being, and it will stay there until November turns into December, in a month's time. There's a warning there. Now, we can consider in November how this chart is going to develop. This chart here is, in a way, is the starting blocks. We can see what is going to happen, as things move on. Now look at Mars. You see, Mars is at 13 Scorpio, and Uranus is at 21 Taurus. So Mars is moving towards an opposition of Uranus, and we'll be feeling it. We're already starting to feel it. Now, Mars-Uranus is the principle, it can be the principle of violence, technology and violence. It's about being accident-prone, having problems with machinery, and it can be connected, it could be connected with acts of violence, assassination, mayhem, all that kind of stuff. And so this Mars-Uranus opposition is getting stronger and stronger as you move through the month, and then on the 11th of I think it's on the 11th of November, that Mars-Uranus becomes exact, and that period, that day around then could be really fraught with problems, tensions, and so on. And while it's exact, around the 10th of November, look at Mercury. Mercury's gone into Sagittarius. So you might think, well, that's good. Mercury going into Sagittarius on the 10th of November. You'd think, Mercury and Scorpio, it's all very brooding and, not able to communicate properly. And you think Mercury and Sagittarius is good news. But the trouble is, firstly, Mercury is in its detriment in Sagittarius, because, Mercury rules Gemini. In Sagittarius, Mercury doesn't actually work too well. Mercury is, about having sort of getting ideas, and then Sagittarius is the big concepts. Mercury is not really about big concepts, and Mercury and Sagittarius can sort of jump to conclusions, get the wrong end of the stick, that kind of thing, and can make big mistakes. And particularly on the 10th of September, 10th of November, because the moment Mercury moves into Sagittarius, it hits a square with Saturn. So if we've been speculating, gambling, whatever, we might really have our comeuppance. Things could really go wrong when Mercury hits Saturn around the 11th, around the 10th of November. Mercury Saturn can at worst be about depression. There is a link actually between Sagittarius and depression. Winston Churchill was a Sagittarius, and he often complained about depression. I think he called it his black dog. And so Mercury and Sagittarius could be there could be depressive moments for all of us with Mercury and Sagittarius, especially when it is square Saturn. So this Mercury square Saturn happens at the same time as Mars opposition Jupiter. So 10th, 11th of November could be a really difficult time. Moving on the 13th of November, we have a new moon. Now, this new moon kind of divides the month in half, in a way. You've got up until the 13th, the moon is waning. We're moving towards the end of a lunar cycle. Then new moon, beginning of a new cycle. Good news, yeah? Well, yes, in one sense. But the problem with this new moon on the 13th of November is, this new moon is at around 21. New moon is at 20 degrees and 44 minutes Scorpio. So this new moon is exactly opposition Uranus. And so remember, we've just got over this Mars opposition Uranus, and so we're going to have new moon opposition Uranus, and that is going to be really difficult, I think. I think there could be world events which are of a quite revolutionary nature, unexpected, sudden breakdown, collapse. That's one way we could see moon opposition Uranus. And so a lot of people do have to be careful. I don't know, to give you an example, just some random example, of course. Random example. Look at Zelensky's chart, president of Ukraine, born, January 25th, 1978, 2 p.m. apparently in Kryvyi Rog. He has got his mid-heaven at 2021 Aquarius. And so that new moon opposition Uranus is going to directly hit his mid-heaven. So mid-November, that's an example of someone who has to be very careful. There could be, mid-heaven is about the career, perhaps his position as president. So all of that might be under a bit of threat, under some kind of threat around November the 13th, and afterwards, because November, new moons do last. They're not just one-day wonders. They certainly last for the next. The next fortnight. So that's an example of someone who might be hit by it. Now, while this is going on, look at the Sun and Mars. At the beginning of the month, the Sun is at 8 Scorpio, Mars at 13 Scorpio, and so the Sun goes faster than Mars. So the Sun is chasing Mars, but Mars is still going at a speed which is pretty close to that of the Sun. So it actually takes the Sun and Mars to quite a bit of time before they actually make the conjunction, and that conjunction happens, I think, on the 18th of November. Now, Sun-Mars conjunctions can be quite dramatic. So this conjunction, I think it takes place at around 27, something like 27 Scorpio. This is quite violent. Sun and Mars are both very fiery planets. Put them as a conjunction in Scorpio, and you've got fireworks there. Now, who's that going to affect? The Sun-Mars conjunction. Well, it's going to affect Joe Biden, isn't it? Because let's just have a quick look at Joe Biden's chart. There's Joe Biden's chart. Now, Joe Biden has his Sun he's got his birthday. Joe Biden's got his birthday on November the 20th. So November 20th, 1942. Born the day after the great Soviet offensive at Stalingrad on November the 19th, 1942. And so this Sun-Mars conjunction hits Biden's Sun-Venus conjunction. So I don't know how that's going to impact him. I think he has to be careful. Mars on his Sun at the time of his birthday, very close to his birthday. He's got to be careful how he goes. He must make sure someone, is watching him, making sure he doesn't miss a step or something. He shouldn't be put anywhere near, I don't know, fire, barbecues, that kind of stuff. Some Mars can often be connected with burns, explosions, that kind of thing. But we also have to remember that Joe Biden is the US head of state. So this Sun-Mars conjunction, because it affects Biden's chart, it's kind of affecting America. It's affecting the US. And so this may say something about America in the world and US foreign policy and the impact of it, the decisions it's making, how people are treating America, events which might mess America up of a Sun-Mars nature. And then we've got Joe Biden's birthday, November the 20th. I've already, on several occasions, I have described how Joe Biden has a dreadful solar return, and and I've always said, I was really kind of hoping for America's sake that Joe Biden would be standing down before his birthday. I've already sort of put up a video about the solar return. Okay, while I'm here, I might as well just show you that solar return and why it's so bad. Joe Biden's solar return, November the 19th. The reason it is so bad is, there's a Sun-Mars conjunction. You can see that there's Uranus very close to the midheaven on Biden's Uranus on the midheaven, and it's sort of widely opposition the Sun-Mars conjunction. And then the moon is right on the descendant, on the Mars-Uranus midpoint. And so that is a big T-square, Uranus hitting the midheaven, Mars on the IC, Uranus on the midheaven, moon on the descendant. So it's all on the angles. And so, this, as I've said before on several occasions, Biden's solar return on the 19th is really, really bad. I would have said it's the worst solar return I've ever seen. And I would suggest that, as I said before, Biden should resign before his birthday. You might think, oh, you don't want Kamala Harris, but honestly, Kamala Harris America is in safer hands with Kamala Harris than with Joe Biden. But I'm not saying I said I'm not making a political point there. I've made this point before. I'm just focusing on the astrology. I'm not talking about policies, whether Democrats are better from Republicans. It's just that if Biden is president after his solar return, if he stays in power after his solar return, it's really bad for America. And it's just astrology. It's of course it may have nothing to do with politics. It may be he'll I don't know, something will happen to him on a sort of personal level, and he'll have to step down, and then everything. Then of course, if he steps down and he's no longer head of state, then his solar return is no longer affecting America. Sorry about that distraction, but I suppose I was going to talk about November. So moving on, as we move into late November, on November the 22nd, the Sun moves into Sagittarius. Now, that might be something of a relief, um, because, you know, for a time, Mars will be the Sun and Mars will be in different signs. Um, but the moment Mars moves, the moment the Sun moves into Sagittarius, it makes a square with Saturn. Um, so around 23rd, 22nd, 23rd of November, just more pressure. And then on the 24th, Mars moves into Mars moves into Sagittarius, and then on the 25th there's a Mars Saturn square. You know, Mars in Sagittarius, square Saturn in Pisces. Mars and Saturn is a death pair. Um, okay, maybe they're not connected with death, but they're connected necessarily, but to do with just a delay, frustration, that kind of thing. And so that's kind of how the month ends. And then on the 27th, we've got a new moon. We've got a full moon, and I'll discuss that full moon at a later date. So my overall message about November is very simple. It's a bad month. I think there's very little to be optimistic about in November. And so we just have to stay out of trouble, and hope that our leaders don't mess things up more than they already have done. But yeah, I mean, okay, I talked about Zelensky having the Uranus and the full moon hitting his midheaven axis. Okay, he does have to be careful. It's not but you know, it's not an absolute certainty that anything bad will happen to him around November the 13th. With Biden, I'm not so sure. You know, I think this just looks really bad. And he really is going to be a big problem. You know, and it's just about the fact that he is, you know, he's president of the country. Something bad might happen, which might not appear to be his fault, but it just is there because because he's president, he's attracting a load of bad stuff to the country he's president of. And so when this bad stuff happens, you know, you might not say, oh, that's not Biden's fault. But the point is, he's president. He's attracting it all. But maybe it's just destiny. If bad things were supposed to happen to America now, well, then I suppose Biden had to be the US president. But anyway, so yeah, that's all I'm going to say about November. But I just want to emphasize it is a bad month, and so this month, just be really careful. Don't do anything stupid. Don't take risks. Yeah, don't play with guns. Don't drive carefully. Yeah, avoid anything. Anything that is remotely dangerous. So that would be my advice for the month ahead. So I'm sorry to have ended on such a negative note, but that's the way it is, or rather, that's the way I see it. Anyway, I will talk to you again tomorrow, and of course, have a happy November.